Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Rosenberg of HowToStretch.com, and today you could take my Flex Test. This is a way for you to gauge your flexibility and see what areas you need to work on to improve your stretch. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate the stretches first, and then you're going to grade yourself from 0, no stretch at all, to 4, pretty good. And I'll show you what each of the little levels mean along the way. So the first stretch, let's get started, is a hamstring stretch. And what we hopefully want to do is to be able to stretch out over the leg with no interference from the hamstring, the back, or the groin. So, for starters, if you cannot get into this position at all, that's a 0. If you can lower the leg down, but the leg's to the side and this is tight, that's a 1. If you could sit up straight and your knee is relatively low, but you can't come forward, that's a 2. If you can come forward a little bit, that's a 3. If you can grab your foot, that's a 4. Okay, so get a little piece of paper or use your memory and mark down what your grade is. Now we're going to do a groin stretch, and this is just to get the general idea of how tight these muscles can be for you. The idea is ultimately to sit like so and to come forward. Again, the knees are down, the back is straight. If you cannot sit like this at all, that's a 0. If you could sit pretty straight but you can't move your knees, and to keep from falling back you have to hold your feet, that's a 1. If you could sit up straight, hold your feet, and feel comfortable but your knees don't go anywhere, that's a 2. If you can bring your knees down, even if it's not this far, and sit comfortably, that's a 3. And if you can come forward, that's a 4. Okay, so figure out what your level is and mark it down. We're going to keep score. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to stretch the neck. So sit comfortably, however you like to sit. And our goal is to be able to roll the neck in a big circle without any interference from any muscles and no pain, and we'll be able to go both directions. By the way, I'm demonstrating this while I'm talking, but when we actually do this, we keep the mouth closed to stretch these deeper muscles. So if you can't move your head at all, or barely at all, that's a 0. If you could bring your chin down to your chest and your head back and your ear to the shoulder and ear to the other shoulder, but there's a lot of tension and restriction, that's a 1. If you could more comfortably bring your chin down and bring your head back and bring your ear to the shoulder and bring your ear to the other shoulder without pulling up your shoulders, that's a 2. If you could roll your neck in a circle, it might feel tight and maybe even a little painful in spots, and you can go both directions, that's a 3. If you could comfortably roll your neck in a big circle one way and a big circle the other way, that's a 4. Now we're going to work on the hands. Now the hands are important because we work with our hands. Our hands are always tight like this. We're driving, we're using the mouse, we're typing on the keyboard. A lot of people have carpal tunnel, and this is a good way to prevent that. So the goal is not only to have your tendons underneath your wrist stretch this way, but to be able to separate the palms so the palms are parallel with the floor, stretching the fingers, the flexion muscles of the hands. So this, if you cannot bring your hands together at all, if they're like this or like this, that's a 0. If at this level you could bring the hands together, that's a 1. If you could drop them down so that the arms are more or less parallel with the floor, that's a 2. Okay, if you could begin to separate your hands, feeling more stretch in your fingers, that's a 3. And if you can get this all the way down and get the palms so that they're parallel with the floor and you're stretching your fingertips, that's a 4. So mark down your score. Okay. Now we're going to work on the shoulders. A lot of Americans, a lot of people who sit at computers, have problems with their shoulders. So the goal here is to be able to interlock your fingers behind your back. So this is a 0. Cannot move your shoulders at all. This is a 1. This is a 2. Getting close is a 3. And if you could interlock your fingers, that's a 4. Now we're going to stretch our back. The goal in this position is called the cobra. You're on the balls of your feet, your hips don't touch, your shoulders are rolled back and down, and you're looking up at the ceiling. That stretches not only the anterior muscles of your body, okay, it also strengthens your back, and it recenters the vertebral discs. More on the website in each of the stretching videos. So if you lay down and you cannot pick your body up at all, that's a 0. If you could use your hands to pick up a little bit, that's a 2. If you could push up and keep the hands down, okay, that's a 3. And if you can get into the full cobra, that's a 4. All right. Next, we're going to stretch the feet. The goal is to be able to stretch and sit this way and go back a little bit. Ultimately, after you stretch your feet, you actually start to stretch your quadricep thigh muscles and, of course, the deeper muscles and tendons in the knees. So this is the ultimate position for this particular flex test. If you can't sit at all like this, if you're very uncomfortable, that's a 0. If you could put, notice I'm on the balls of the feet, because a lot of times people who can't sit all the way down, this is as far as they can go. If you can do that, sit down, come a little bit down, but it hurts a lot, that's a 1. If you could put your feet all the way down, but you're leaning forward, that's a 2. If you could sit up straight, no problem, and comfortably sit on your feet, but can't go back, that's a 3. And a 4 is when you can go back comfortably, ultimately all the way down. Okay, so mark down your score. Next, we're going to do the squat. The squat's indicative of a lot of things. It stretches your backs, stretches the insides of your hips, it stretches your knees, it stretches your ankles, it stretches the muscles that are in the front or anterior part of your shin. When those are tight, a lot of people get shin splints from walking or running. So the ultimate position for our flex test is to be able to squat like this with your back straight and your hands off the ground. Okay? If you can't get into this at all, that's a 0. If you can get down, but you have to have your hands on the floor and your heels are up in the air, that's a 1. If you can sit back on your heels, but your hands still have to stay here, but they can't quite touch, okay, that's a 2. If you could sit upright with the hands on the floor for balance and your heels touch, that's a 3. And if you can remove your hands and sit up straight with your back straight, that's a 4. So mark your scores down. Okay. This is what I want you to do. Tally up your scores. Go over to howtostretch.com and see what those scores mean so you could see what your flexibility is, the areas you need to work on, and a very special stretch video for you to study with me and find out how to stretch those areas. All right? See you over there.